It was nearly 9 p.m. when I heard the garage door slide open. I was seated at the kitchen table, staring at a half-eaten plate of reheated pasta, the steam long gone. I didn't get up. I didn't have to. The pattern was familiar now. He'd walk in, loosen his tie, mumble a hey, then disappear into the bedroom or his office without looking at me. And like clockwork, that's exactly what happened. Daniel and I had been married for 7 years. Comfortable years maybe, but not warm ones anymore. Somewhere along the line, the laughter thinned, the touches stopped, and the silences stretched too long to be ignored. He wasn't cruel. He was just absent. Present in body, never in spirit. I used to try. Ask him how work was, offer a glass of wine, suggest a movie night. He always answered with the same polite detachment, eyes never leaving his phone. Sometimes I caught myself looking at the clock, counting the hours he spent at work and the minutes we spent in the same room, yet worlds apart. I had become invisible in my own home. A shadow of a woman he used to desire. I couldn't even remember the last time he touched me without it feeling like a routine. One evening, as I stepped outside to check the mailbox, I bumped into Marcus. He lived 2 doors down. Mid to late 20s, maybe. Clean-cut, a little rugged, with a lazy grin that made him seem like he was always in on a joke no one else knew. We'd exchanged hellos before, the kind neighbors toss around without much thought. But that day something shifted. "You okay?" he asked, tilting his head. I hadn't realized I was standing still, staring blankly into the street. I gave a half-laugh, brushing my hair behind my ear. "Yeah, just long day." "Tell me about it," he said, smiling. "But you look like you've had about 3 in a row." That line should have annoyed me. Instead I laughed. Real laugh. The kind I hadn't heard from myself in months. He smiled again and handed me my mail, one envelope slipping from my fingers as I reached for it. Our hands touched briefly. It was nothing. And yet, it wasn't. Later that night, as I poured myself a glass of red wine and sat by the window, I caught myself replaying our conversation. Just a few minutes of harmless talk. But why did I feel a warmth in my chest I hadn't felt in so long? Daniel came home late again. I heard him rummaging through the fridge, cursing softly under his breath about nothing being ready to eat. I didn't move. I stayed by the window, pretending I didn't hear. Maybe I wanted him to notice the silence. Maybe I wanted him to ask what was wrong. But he didn't. Instead, he called out from the kitchen, "I'm ordering takeout." "Want anything?" Said no. I wasn't hungry. He didn't ask why. The days that followed blurred into a pattern. Marcus and I crossed paths more often. A nod here, a small joke there. A compliment I hadn't expected. "That color looks good on you," he said once, gesturing to the navy blue sweater I wore. I wanted to deny the way my stomach flipped at his words, but I couldn't. It wasn't about Marcus. It wasn't even about attraction. At least, not at first. It was about being seen. Late one afternoon, I was carrying groceries up the stairs when the paper bag ripped at the bottom, sending apples tumbling across the pavement. Before I could even sigh, Marcus was beside me, helping me gather them up. "Always prepared," he smirked, pulling a reusable bag from his own shopping tote. "You're lucky I'm the neighborhood hero." "Guess I owe you," I said, smiling despite myself. He paused, looking at me, not in the way Daniel used to, full of hunger, but in a way that made me feel real. Like I was there. Like I mattered. I thanked him again and turned to go, but his voice stopped me. "You don't always have to carry everything alone, you know." I nodded slowly, though I wasn't sure he was talking about the groceries anymore. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, next to the man I had once loved with every ounce of me, and stared at the ceiling. Daniel's breathing was soft, steady, peaceful, untroubled. I reached for my phone and opened the text screen, then closed it, bit my lip, and thought of Marcus. It started raining that afternoon, light at first, then heavier, soaking the pavement outside my window. I was curled up on the couch, knees drawn to my chest, half listening to the soft tapping against the glass. Daniel had left earlier that morning for a work retreat. 3 days. He didn't kiss me goodbye. He didn't even tell me when he'd be back. Just a note on the counter with his flight details and a reminder to feed the cat. I hadn't planned on seeing anyone. I'd taken the day off, hoping to spend it in silence, maybe cleaning the closet or rereading an old book I could never finish. But around noon, the kitchen light flickered out. I tried tightening the bulb, then gave up. It had been doing that for weeks, and Daniel always said he'd fix it. He never did. I opened the hallway closet to find the toolbox, but it was missing, probably still in the garage. I muttered something under my breath and walked out to the porch, thinking maybe I could knock on the neighbor's door, ask for a ladder or a replacement bulb. I hadn't meant to knock on Marcus's door, but somehow I did. When he opened it, he looked surprised, then concerned. "Hey, everything okay?" I nodded a little too quickly. "Just a bulb. Kitchen's out again." He grinned. "Let me guess. Daniel said he'd get to it." I laughed before I could stop myself. "Yeah, something like that." 10 minutes later, he was in my kitchen, standing on a stool, reaching up to fix the light. I tried to busy myself, fussing with dishes, wiping a clean countertop, but the air felt heavy. Different. Blows. "Got it," he said finally, stepping down. "Should be fine now." Loose connection. I turned to thank him, but he was already watching me. Not staring, just watching. Like he was trying to read a page in a book no one else noticed. "Do you want something to drink?" I asked just to fill the silence. He nodded. "Sure. Whatever you're having." I poured 2 glasses of wine, midday indulgence I rarely allowed myself, and we sat across from each other at the dining table. The rain softened into a rhythm outside, like a gentle hum under the conversation. Talk about simple things. Movies. Bad neighbors. How both of us hated doing laundry. I found myself smiling too much, laughing too easily. It was nothing. And yet, it wasn't. I hadn't felt so at ease in so long. Hadn't felt wanted. Not in the obvious way, but in the way someone leans in just slightly when you speak. The way they ask follow-up questions. The way their eyes don't leave your face even when you look away. He picked up the wine bottle and refilled my glass without asking. "You always sit like that when you're nervous?" he asked softly. I blinked. "Like what?" He nodded toward my hands. I hadn't noticed I was twisting the stem of the glass, knuckles white. "Let go." "Sorry. You don't have to apologize." His voice was lower now. Not for being human. Something in his tone made the room feel smaller. Or maybe it was just the way he was looking at me, like he was afraid to move and break whatever invisible thread had formed between us. Pause. Breath. Then another. And then he stood up. Slowly. Walked around the table, stopping just a step behind me. I didn't turn around. My heart was pounding too loud in my ears. I didn't ask what he was doing. I didn't have to. He placed a hand gently on my shoulder. Not pushing. Not demanding. Closed my eyes. "You should tell me to stop," he whispered. His voice was warm against the back of my neck. But I didn't. Because I didn't want him to. And when his lips brushed my shoulder, just once, barely there, it felt like my entire body exhaled something I'd been holding in for years. I turned to face him slowly. Our eyes locked. His hands found my waist, tentative. Mine reached for his shirt, trembling. Kissed. Careful. Like we were afraid of waking something. His fingers moved along my back, unsure but wanting. Let him. I leaned into him. It didn't feel like betrayal in that moment. Felt like warmth. Like something buried rising to the surface. When we finally pulled apart, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked. The rain had stopped. And just like that, the silence returned. But this one wasn't hollow. This one was full of questions, of guilt, of longing. I walked him to the door. Our hands brushed, but we didn't touch again. He looked at me like he wanted to say something. I bit my lip and closed the door. Morning light spilled through the blinds in soft, broken stripes. I sat at the edge of the bed, my robe wrapped tightly around me, as if holding myself together. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Daniel's flight confirmation. He'd be home by evening. On time as always. I hadn't slept. Not really. My head rested on the pillow, but my mind wandered for hours. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus's face. That look in his eyes right before he left. Not regret. Not pride either. Just something heavy. Like he understood exactly what had happened, and what it meant. The house was silent again. Not peaceful. Just quiet in that hollow, echoing way. I made coffee but didn't drink it. The kitchen light flickered once, then stayed steady. The same bulb he had fixed. I touched my lips. Still warm. Still remembering. By the time Daniel walked through the door later that day, suitcase in hand, everything in the house was perfectly in place. Nothing looked different. Nothing had changed. And yet I had. "Hey," he said, setting his bag down. "Hey," I replied. He leaned in, kissed my cheek like always. Soft, quick, impersonal. He smelled like travel and stale hotel soap. I watched him walk into the living room, already pulling out his laptop, already talking about missed emails and scheduling conflicts. He didn't notice the wine bottle in the trash. He didn't ask if I was okay. He didn't even notice that I hadn't smiled once. I wanted to scream. Not at him but at the space between us. The space he'd built, brick by brick, over the last few years. The kind of space that makes a woman fall into someone else's arms not for passion, but for proof that she still exists. Later that evening, I stood by the window as he dozed on the couch. A sports channel played quietly in the background. His chest rose and fell with the rhythm of someone who had nothing to worry about. Nothing to suspect. And I, his wife, stood 2 feet away, drowning in guilt. But it wasn't guilt that stung the most. It was the memory of how alive I felt when Marcus touched me. How deeply I had missed being seen, being wanted. How easy it had been to cross a line I never thought I'd even approach. I didn't reach out to Marcus. Couldn't. I told myself it was because I respected what I had left of my marriage. But in truth, I was scared. Scared of what it would mean if I did. Scared of what it would pull out of me again. Still, I couldn't help but hope, ridiculously, shamefully, that I might see him. Just once. That maybe he'd walk by, glance up at the window, and everything would fall into place without a word spoken. Weeks passed. I avoided walking past his unit. If I heard footsteps in the hallway, I stayed behind the door. My eyes always scanned the street through the blinds. But he never came. Then one morning as I was leaving for work, I saw him. He was walking to his car, coffee in hand, keys dangling from his fingers. He looked the same, calm, unreadable, but when he saw me he paused. Just a second. Eyes met. Not a word passed between us. But in that single glance, 1,000 things were said. He gave a soft nod, nothing more. No smile. No wave. Just an acknowledgement. As if to say, I remember. I haven't forgotten. But we don't speak of it. And I nodded back. 'Cause that's all we could do. I didn't look back as I walked to my car. My chest ached. Not from heartbreak, but from restraint. From the weight of what had happened and the silence we had agreed upon without ever speaking it aloud. That night, I lay beside Daniel again. He turned his back as usual. I stared at the ceiling, the shadows stretching across it like unanswered questions. I thought about how easy it was to lose yourself in someone else's gaze when the one you love forgets to look at you. I thought about how Marcus never asked for anything, but gave me something I hadn't felt in years. And I thought about silence. Not the cold kind that fills empty rooms, but the dangerous kind. The kind that holds secrets. The kind that keeps you up at night. The kind that lingers long after the touch is gone. I bit my lip when I saw him again. But I didn't say a word. Because sometimes silence is all we deserve.